To severe, got it. To severe but successful tests still find they often lack emotional sobriety. Perhaps they will be the spearhead for the next major development of AA, the development of much more real maturity and balance, which is to say humility, in our relations with ourselves, with our fellows, and with God. Those adolescent urges so many of us have for top approval, perfect security, and perfect romance, urges quite appropriate to age 17, prove to be an impossible way of life when we are at age 47 or 57. Since AA began, I've taken immense wallops in all these areas because of my failure to grow up emotionally and spiritually. My God, how painful it is to keep demanding the impossible, and how very painful to discover, finally, that all along we've had the cart before the horse. Then comes the final agony of seeing how awfully wrong we have been, but still finding ourselves unable to get off the emotional merry-go-round. How to translate a right mental conviction into a right emotional result, and so into easy, happy, and good living. Well, that's not any of the neurotics' problem. It's the problem of life itself for all of us who have got to the point of real willingness to hew to right principles in all our affairs. Even then, as we hew away, peace and joy may still elude us. That's the place so many of us AA oldsters have come to, and it's a hell of a spot, literally. How shall our unconscious, from which so many of our fears, compulsions, and phony aspirations still stream, be brought into line with what we actually believe, know, and want? How to convince our dumb, raging, and hidden Mr. Hyde becomes our main task. I've recently come to believe that this can be achieved. I believe so because I begin to see many benighted ones, folks like you and me, commencing to get results. Last autumn, depression, having no really rational cause at all, almost took me to the cleaners. I began to be scared that I was in for another long chronic spell. Considering the grief I've had with depressions, it wasn't a bright prospect. I kept asking myself, why can't the 12 steps work to release depression? By the hour, I stared at the St. Francis prayer. It's better to comfort than to be comforted. Here was the formula all right, but why didn't it work? Suddenly I realized what the matter was. My basic flaw had always been dependence, almost absolute dependence, on people, on circumstances to supply me with prestige, security, and the like. Failing to get these things according to my perfectionist dreams and specifications, I had fought for them. And when defeat came, so did my depressions. Because I had over the years undergone a little spiritual development, the absolute quality of these frightful dependencies had never before been so starkly revealed. Reinforced by what grace I could secure in prayer, I found I had to exert every ounce of will and action to cut off these faulty emotional dependencies upon people, upon AA, indeed upon any set of circumstances whatsoever. Then only could I be free to love as Francis had. Emotional and instinctual satisfactions I saw were really the extra dividends of having love, offering love, and expressing a love appropriate to each relation of life. Plainly, I could not avail myself of God's love until I was able to offer it back to him by loving others as he would have me. And I couldn't possibly do that so long as I was victimized by false dependencies. For my dependency meant demand. A demand for the possession and control of the people and conditions surrounding me. While those words, absolute dependency, may look like a gimmick, they were the ones that helped to trigger my release into my present degree of stability and quietness of mind, qualities which I am now trying to consolidate by offering love to others regardless of the return to me. This seems to be the primary healing circuit. An outgoing love of God's creation and his people, by means of which we avail ourselves of his love for us. It is most clear that the real current can't flow until our paralyzing dependencies are broken and broken at depth. Only then can we possibly have a glimmer of what adult love really is. Spiritual calculus, you say? Not a bit of it. Watch any AA of 6 months working with a new 12-step case. If the case says to the devil with you, the 12th stepper only smiles and turns to another case. He doesn't feel frustrated or rejected. If his next case responds, and in turn starts to give love and attention to other alcoholics, yet gives none back to him, the sponsor is happy about it anyway. He still doesn't feel rejected. Instead, he rejoices that his one-time prospect is sober and happy. And if his next following case turns out in later time to be his best friend or romance, then the sponsor is most joyful. But he well knows that his happiness is a byproduct, the extra dividend of giving without any demand for a return. The really stabilizing thing for him was having and offering love to that strange drunk on his doorstep. That was Francis at work. Powerful and practical, minus dependency and minus demand. In the first 6 months of my own sobriety, I worked hard with many alcoholics. Not a one responded. Yet this work kept me sober. It wasn't a question of those alcoholics giving me anything. My stability came out of trying to give, not out of demanding that I receive. Thus, I think it can work out with emotional sobriety. If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root of it some unhealthy dependency and its consequent unhealthy demand. Let us, with God's help, continually surrender those hobbling demands. Then we can be set free to live and love. We may then be able to 12-step ourselves and others into emotional sobriety. Of course, I haven't offered you a really new idea, only a gimmick that has started to unhook several of my own hexes at depth. Nowadays, my brain no longer races compulsively in either elation, grandiosity, or depression. I have been given a quiet place in bright sunshine.
Hello, everybody. Sam, I'm an alcoholic. It's really good to see all of you. This meeting still really warms my heart. And I was thinking, man, this might have to we might start outgrowing this, or this might have to end because everybody's going back to meetings and now they're shutting them back down. So I'm glad we got it. I'm glad we got this going on. And man, Tait, I did something really stupid the other day. I started taking one of those aerobic boxing classes, for like 6 months, and I got all into it. And then they had this fight camp thing, where they start up where you train to like really fight. And then each of the instructors have a match with their students. And now all the guys are getting super into it, and I'm like sparring yesterday and this guy just hits me in the face and I'm like, shit, what am I doing? Like, why did I do this? Anyway, so we'll see what happens with all that. But without further ado, I won't take any more time up. It's great to see you, man. You got a great light about you. And I'm really grateful you came on tonight. Thanks for coming.
Man, thanks for having me, Sam. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to be here. See so many friends. My name's Tait Fletcher. I'm an alcoholic. I was struck sober January 7th in 1994. And I've maintained my sobriety since then through what I would call rigorous work. Not always rigorous. I've had a couple of lapses that I'll talk about in there of the work, but I really, I just needed a way out when I got here, more than anything else. I had no idea what AA would offer me, but I knew what I couldn't have anymore, right? And so looking at that, like I didn't have anybody to talk to. I grew up in Michigan, and I was always kind of, I feel like I was needing a drink from when I got out of the womb, kind of. I feel like I was maybe suffering untreated alcoholism from the very beginning. And as that kind of went on, by the time I was 9 years old, just to give a little background, I was seeing a psychiatrist because I had suicidal ideations. I don't know what was so wrong. I don't have a recollection of what it was at 9 years old that made me like that, but I was completely fascinated and desired death in a way that it was almost in the way that I desired to drink the next drink. And just a real curiosity and a thought that maybe this would make it all okay. I had my first drink about 3 years after that when I was about 12 years old. And it went on from there. Early on in my drinking, all my people had been alcoholics, a lot of them still drinking. A couple that weren't would admonish me about, like, where this can go and how it can be corrosive. And all that. And I thought that just sounded crazy. I'm just a kid trying to not kill myself and get on down the road and have some friends and some laughs and be welcomed into the party. And that's really what I was looking for. And I didn't see, it's almost like I remember reading in the spiritual appendix, and it talks about down at the bottom of like the first page of that appendix, it talks about how the friends of the alcoholic and the family can see the alcoholic getting better long before they notice a difference, right? I also noticed the reverse was true. All of my people saw that I was getting sick far before I ever thought I had any issue, right? And what an impossible place to be if you love an alcoholic, to sit there and watch them in that state and have them be just completely unaware. and I was completely unaware to where I thought these people they're being kind of a pain to me. Anyway, things went on. I've been in jail. I've been, I started getting arrested when I was 13 years old for drug possession and paraphernalia, and then other things as it went on. It culminated. The biggest charge I had against me was a bank robbery charge, and I was, I guess I was 23 years old, right in there, and I was locked up in Inglewood Penitentiary up in Colorado. Some of you guys live by there, and that was a month into my sobriety, into my latest sobriety, right? That was a month in. I'm locked up. I'm in 5-point restraints, and my mom's coming to look at me through glass, and I go, this is where I knew I would end up. This is how I figured it would go. And by the time I was released from that, I was in tears a lot. I was processing a lot, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I drove straight to the Friendship Club in New Mexico. And I'd been working out of I read the book and I'd underlined a couple things. I want to differentiate between what I was doing and working out of the book. I'd underlined a couple things, and I talked to a guy who's a dear friend of mine still and still sober today, named Neil, and he and his brother had come up to me and they'd said, what are you willing to do to stay sober? And I just knew that they would say that anything I said other than anything would be the wrong answer. And I remember with these guys before that, like a year before, I was in a halfway house, and these guys said, hey man, you need Alcoholics Anonymous real bad, but Alcoholics Anonymous is gonna be fine without you. And they just kind of, it was the first time I heard anything about a worker amongst workers. That's kind of what that is. It's like, yeah, just get into the group and become a part of it. To me, it was like an omen or a threat almost too, or a foreboding warning. Anyway, previous to that, I'd had a year clean, about a year and a half, and I went out. And why I went out, I want to say too, is because I failed to do the work. I failed to enlarge my spiritual life. I failed to create a community in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't get in the middle, as they said. They said, hey man, get in the middle. Nobody falls out of the middle of a boat. And I was like, that's some corn, whatever. Okay, cool. And I knew where AA was, but I didn't know what AA was, if that makes sense. And then I found myself at a place where I don't believe everybody in AA has alcoholism, the more I know people. But what I do believe is that if you got alcoholism, that it demands treatment. And that I could either treat it with a spiritual path, or I could treat it by drinking. And if I waited long enough, there was no choice that drinking was going to have it. And I didn't have any defense against that. And so I drank. And I thought everything was going to be okay. I'd lied to myself, just like Bill talks about in the book. This time I had a lot of sweet promises before, but this time I was done for good and for all. And I knew, and he believed it. I would take a lie detector on that. I believe it. And then I'm only going to drink a little bit, smoke pot now and then. Before I even sit down, I order an ounce of cocaine from a guy that I'd had some business dealings with before. Before I even sit down, and I swear to God, before that, I'm only going to have a couple of drinks on the weekends, and maybe I'll smoke grass once a month or something. I don't know. It seemed like I could do that because back in the day, I used to think about being sober as we're just going to drink beer. Like if you're just drinking beer, that's basically like being in a treatment center. And that's kind of the way, my thinking was going into it. Anyway, I get into AA and I meet these two beautiful godsends, Neil and Brian, and they started walking me down a path and they started introducing me to people. And I didn't work with those guys directly, but what they did is they opened their hearts and their hands and they reached out to me and they had clear eyes and they looked me in the eye. And they said, we'll walk with you. I'm not going to drag or push you, but we'll walk with you is every step you want to take. And they helped me create a community. It sounds corny. They took me to Carol's. They took me to play pool. And that doesn't seem like anything unless you were coming from where I was coming from. And that was, I burned out everybody that ever loved me in my life. And so these guys, they opened up what to me, I feel like I'm a kid growing up and the world's cold and dark and man, I got to fight. And what happened for me in Alcoholics Anonymous is, I heard it here, is that Alcoholics Anonymous met me with such a kindness that I didn't have any defenses for that. And so I'm real grateful to be here. And my mom was grateful I'm here. And I say that because I was a terrorist to her. An absolute terrorist. And there's things in my history and my story that I would say I can't make right, but through the steps Alcoholics Anonymous, it's like, and through these promises of, my biggest promise is that your darkest past will be your greatest ally when you're helping others, right? So anyway, I get in. It's a real honor to speak here, and I've been nervous about it for I think 3 months now, and I thought about it all goddamn day. And I got notebooks, like 4 or 5 different notebooks with all my good ideas that I'm going to say. Yeah, I got, anyway, and I went for a walk before this meeting, just to go and cool out a little bit. And I thought emotional sobriety. And I go, when I was new and I was working at a place called the Friendship Club here in Santa Fe. And that's where I found sobriety, was in Santa Fe, New Mexico at the Friendship Club. And I worked a coffee bar there for a long, long time. And they gave me the what's the word? The assignment. It's not the assignment. You'll know the word as I speak it out. I'm sorry. And I'll explain that later too. But they gave me the position of, I'm a liaison between the young people's group and between the board of directors at the club. And so I got to be with like adults and see how people behaved. And I got an honored position, and I got to look at some of the inner workings and find out some of the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous early on, right? And so I was in this kind of a training program almost, as I look back at it now. And I would get involved with the young people's groups, and we started meetings, and we would go and we'd start conventions and all that. And I remember when I was a couple years sober, it was the first time I ever heard the term emotional sobriety. And I think around that time I was reading Dr. Paul's books. There's more to quitting drinking than quitting drinking. You can't make me angry, things like that, right? And even I had mixed feelings. I'm like, man, he put his name on publication and put it out there. And I had feelings about it. I didn't know, and I'm trying to learn and I'm trying to do it right. And I don't want to make a misstep. And I'm listening for the phrase that pays, because I was struck drunk before, y'all. And so I'm listening for that secret word. What's this thing that's going to get me through, that's going to put a balm over my heart so that I don't have to drown it in booze to get through the day. What is that thing? And there was never that thing. There's always these little things. And they would talk about hope, and they would talk about faith, and they talk about honesty and willingness and all these kind of ephemeral things. It was like spirituality to me. It was like wisps that I could sometimes get a taste of like, oh, I think I know what they mean. And then it would be gone and evaporate, right? And it was like me chasing God was like that. And I thought, man, I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to get this. I don't even understand the words. And nobody told me, of course you don't understand the words. This is a new language. This is a language of recovery. You go into a Russian class and you think you're going to understand what's going on? This is as different as Russian to you, Tait. And so I had to give myself time, and that was one of the damnedest things they said early on, is you got to give time, Tait. And I thought, well, isn't that a sucker, man? Man, there's no control at all in that for me. Like, just got to give, what time is this I'm giving? What's God's time? Anyway. And then I go, I'm never going to find this God or whatever. And a dude told me, he goes, Tait, you don't have to. It says we only got to seek him. It says in the seeking that you'll find. You'll find answers. You might not find God. And I never really understood what that meant early on, you know, and I thought about this emotional sobriety. I thought, I got that. 2 years sober, and I knew a lot of stuff, you know. I was in my 20s, and just I could see, I know what you mean, you know. And I remember asking a guy when I was in that same halfway house a few years before, and I forget what I was asking him, but he had stuff like on his bumper stickers on his desk. It was like, what are you going to do? Send me back to Vietnam? And another one was watch your step, but there was no step in his office, right? And another one was an emergent or poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. He was like that kind of guy, right? He was pretty straightforward. And I go, man, I want to know, like, I mean, what's this going to be like? And how's that going to be? He goes, Tait, you want to know answers that a 35-year-old divorce guy knows. Like, you know, you can't know any of that stuff. It's not, you're not in the space for that experientially. And I didn't understand what he meant at all until maybe last year. And that was a long time ago, y'all. But as I look through it, you know, I think I understand these things. And then as time goes by and as the steps go by, I never understood. I understood, and I had an idea of what they meant when every time I pick up the book, it's a different book. But I didn't have any experiential life to overlay that with, right? And so I kind of understood the words. And then the sponsor of mine said, because I was bitching about somebody, I'm like, they talk all this, but they look at what they're doing. And he goes, what do babies learn to do? They learn how to make noise first. They don't understand what they're doing. They learn the mechanical function, Tait. These people are in growth. They're all in a space of growth. And he goes, and I hope you don't judge yourself so harshly. And I laughed at him and I thought he was a punk. And what I found out is that I do judge myself that harshly. And it don't help my mind at all. And it don't help my community. And it doesn't bring up anybody around me. And it doesn't do me any service. And it's not a proper self-reflection. I love what I heard this morning. I think it was this morning in a meeting. I heard a guy or somebody was talking, and they said that the thing about being self-obsessed or whatever, arrogant, it's not about I think about myself in this great way, or it's not about I think about myself as if I'm garbage. It's I think about myself too often. And that's completely my thing, whether it's misery that I'm forecasting or whether it's how much better I am than the guy next to me or whatever. I'm imprisoned by that stuff. I never understood when my mom said when I was a little kid, when you hurt somebody else, it tarnishes your soul. When you cuss, Tait, it tarnishes your soul. And I thought that was corny too. I didn't understand that till decades later. This idea of emotional sobriety, you know, I brought it up when I was 2 years sober, and I was asking some of the older guys, because that's all I did is ask older guys a lot of stuff. I had a lot of questions, a new language, you know? And so I said, what is that? He goes, there is no such thing. There's sobriety. You're physically sober, and that's what we count in AA. And he's right. That's true. That's why I always really admire the Al-Anons, because they judge themselves by their thinking, which just leads me to the emotion, which leads me to the drink. If I could get into it before I got the emotion, boy, that's a better deal, you know? And so I started looking at these things with these different recovery programs like that. Like, what are my standards to be? Because I had no standards. I come in a feral animal, and I don't have any standards of behavior. I do anything that feels good. And then I understand that my feel goods are hurting me and causing me a deficit. And that now I'm here and I can't get out of this hole. And no matter what I pick up, where I pick it up, I end up at the same crummy cul-de-sac of a dead end. And here I am again, right? It's that third chapter in the big book, you know, trying to pronounce myself a non-alcoholic or whatever, and running through all that. It was the first place in the book I really go, God, this is me. This is all me all the way through, man. And I've been trying to beat the game. And then the only questions left is, are you able to beat the game? Or are you ready to surrender? And in that surrender, you know, I was scared. And I'm still scared, y'all. But whatever happens right now, I got this idea that God's everything in my life. And he's everything in your life, and and that's okay. And I can still be scared and keep walking. And this idea of surrender, you know, they go, you know, at the halfway house, they tried to get me to talk about surrender. And I was like, yeah, let's go. And he goes, when are you going to hire me, Tait? And I go, what do you mean, man? I'm here. Let's go. He goes, when are you going to surrender? And I didn't understand what that was until this guy, John Lowe, years later became my sponsor in AA. He goes, he goes, you know, nobody surrenders, Tait, while they still got their guns on. Nobody's surrendering, making demands. Nobody's going, I'll surrender, but it's like this. No, man, if you're cooked, you're cooked. And if you're not cooked, have some more cocktails. Because that's the only thing we know is despair and brokenness to the point of no return until there's no more answers left. The beautiful part is there's a great solution for that. But man, it's a mother getting from here to there. I mean, that's a lot. And so this idea of giving up and just going, put all your old ideas away and let somebody else take those ideas for you. I started doing that, you know. They talk about, I guess I'll want to talk about the steps. How long am I sharing for tonight, Sam?
However long you want, man.
That's a horrible answer, but thank you.
I know we got at least another, I mean, you know, usually 30 minutes to an hour.
Awesome.
At least.
Awesome.
So,
okay. Yeah.
so
I just wanted to have a gauge.
30,
thank you.
30
anyway,
minutes, and if you really want to rock hard, do it an hour. You know what I'm saying?
All right. We'll see how it rolls. And so anyways, I'm there at the Friendship Club and I'm talking about that first step, and they go, right about we was the first direction I ever got. And then when I started working with the guy, he goes, I want you to go to a meeting every single day. And if you miss a meeting, your 90 days starts again that day. And if you go to 2 meetings one day, that doesn't count. And I want you to call 5 people a day. Every time you go to a meeting, I want you to get 2 numbers from men in the rooms. And so all that's worth mentioning, you know, and this is like, as I'm going through the steps, I'm getting these gems dropped on me. And so they go, you know, what do you think about powerless over alcohol? And we go through the book, we go through the doctor's opinion, we underline things, we're doing all this. And I go, yeah, I dig it, man. When I start drinking, I don't have any choice in how many I drink. I just keep going until I don't know what happens. It's like I get a divine intervention if I'm going to get separated from alcohol at that point. And then he goes, well, can you stay away from the first drink? Because if you could do that, it wouldn't be a problem, right? And I just look back and I go, I never considered it, but I thought, yeah, I guess I've never been able to stay away from the first drink. And he goes, well, what happens? And I go, well, I tell myself it's going to be different, that somehow I'll outmaneuver it or something like that. Or sometimes if I'm depressed, if I'm in a real bad place, I'll go screw it all anyway, you know? And I have that kind of an attitude that's more desperate and aggressive. And he goes, does that sound manageable? How are your relationships in your life? How's your work life? How's your, you know, and I'm a drug dealer. I rob houses. My work life, right? And you know, I go, I don't have any skills. You know, I work at this coffee bar for $10 an hour, and I'm just washing cups. And he goes, who are you washing cups for? I go, I guess these alcoholics in here, you know. And he goes, no, you're washing cups for God, man. You're washing cups for God. I want your life to start looking like a communion or a prayer. In all your actions is an expression of what your spiritual life is, Tait. Every interaction you have with another person or a being or an idea, that is your expression of spirituality at that time, how you're coming out and presenting yourself. And I never thought about things in that way. And he goes, I want you to write down the 20 craziest things that you ever did while you were drinking regarding your alcoholism. I go, okay. And I write a list, and he goes, this brings us into step 2. And I want you to consider that none of these things are the thing. This is all drunken behavior, being arrested, getting into fights, going to jail, hungover, it's all drunken behavior that happens to everybody that drinks. The insanity that Bill's talking about is that insanity of being abstinent for a while and going back to another drink. And I go, oh, I tell myself that all the time. He goes, yeah, I know, you just told me that. And I go, okay. And he says, so this is about getting a new manager. And so that idea, that was hope in that step, in that principle. I started looking at these principles behind these things. And I started thinking about these things that like air that you couldn't get your hands around, right? And they started to become the firmament and the bedrock that I built my life on. Because I had nothing, I had air. And so they go, I want you to consider that maybe this is the way to go. And it gave me hope that maybe me too, I could be a different kind of drinker. These people that explain, and I heard this guy Adam talk, and he became one of my heroes in AA. He was like 9 years sober. I heard him talk. He was an outlaw biker. And I go, man, I relate to that. I relate to the drama and the craziness. And it dawned on me, and I told him after, I go, dude, I'm not having trouble with the dope and the booze right now, but kicking the lifestyle. And he goes, oh, I know. And it's all that adrenaline charge. So I started talking to him, and I thought, man, he's rearranged and he's got a different standard for himself, and he walks different. And I thought, maybe I could have that, because he says he's just like me. And maybe I could have that. Maybe a guy like me that's a loser, that should be dead, that wants to kill himself, maybe I could have that. And it was the first little glimmer of hope that I got in AA. And then they said, okay, this is your willingness. So you're going to give away all the things that brought you here, your willingness to come here, and putting away your old ideas about how you're going to get better. You're going to make a business contract with God and give him controlling interest to your life. And he's going to take care of all your thoughts and worries, and you're going to do all the work. And that's the way it's going to line up. And we're going to try to meditate on that and keep towards that. And so I did. And then I did the next thing. They said, now more action. So I started writing. I wrote a real mediocre list over 1.5 pages or something like that. And I got through that. And then I read it to my guy. And I just keep going through it. I'm piecing all these things. And I'm just going through the motions, y'all. And I don't understand a damn thing. And I'm not having a big change come over me. But when I finished that 4-step, I knew that was a sticking point. And I go, well, hell. I got over that one at least. I had these milestones. The milestones too scared me. 30, 60, 90 days, terrifying for me. When I get like 5 days out from that, I go, oh man, they only put that out because we're all losers and we need a little piece of cake at every 30 days or whatever. And so I know this is, it's a disaster coming. And you know, otherworldly things are controlling my life is what I think. I don't see my actions cause and effect creating my life. I think I'm being struck in these ways by some supernatural thing, right? And so I figure I'm going to get struck drunk at 30, 60, 90, something horrible, because they're safeguarding it with this cake and chip, you know? And I just went through paranoid, anxious, and scared all the time. But I just kept going through the steps. I wanted to kill myself the first couple of years pretty steadily. And if you know me now, you know, 27 years later, it's not a whole lot different. I mean, in that regard, there's still some dark times, and I've got a lot of tools on how to get over that. I'll talk about that too. But this idea of staying in the work, it made me feel like I had value at least. It made me feel like I was doing a purposeful thing. And I'd been without purpose for so long, and I was so miserable, and I was so dying at the bottom of the bottle, that to have some kind of purpose to go towards something made me feel some kind of esteem. And it was the first time ever. And another sponsor of mine, Jeannie Hugo, would say, you know, you want self-esteem, you got to do esteemable acts, kitten. And she would call me kitten when she wanted to call me dummy, I think, you know, but she would call me kitten a lot. And say, just try to be useful, try to position yourself to be helpful. You don't think you got any help, you got a car, you can take people to meetings that don't have a car. You know, you sit down in the meeting and just listen. Don't speak so much. You carry the disease and the illness, and you need to hear the message of recovery. And you don't have that. So you better listen and then ask questions later. And I just did that. For whatever reason, I was smart enough to dummy up and just follow directions. And these things started to set me free in a way. And then as I'm deciding about what route I'm going to take for suicide, a guy outside, this old hippie outside the club says, you know, you're ready to cash your own check, you're free. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, you can try anything. You don't care if you're going to die or not. What do you like doing? And I didn't have any answer that was not criminal or abusive to him, you know? And he goes, well, why don't you try some things? You know, go jump out of a plane or something, do something. And so I started doing things, and I just started trying things. And I started listening to other guys in AA, and I started listening to guys that were looking at a holistic health. I listened to the guy named Bob Earl, and he had all these cassettes, and I was just so enamored with him, because he's this guy that's an unhealthy dude that comes into AA, and still now he's unhealthy and in AA. And he's like, I got to have a different life. I can't just be smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee till I die here. Like, you know, what does God want? Is this spitting in God's face if I'm not looking for all the goods that God can give me? To me, it is. I started taking that position at that point. You're spitting in the face of God if you're going to just throw his gifts away and not try to be helpful, useful, or cultivate these. And that was kind of and I had a pretty strict regimen with myself about it. And I think that as I went on, I started talking about girls and stuff with my sponsor. And I think it's pertinent. Everything, you know, they told me early on, and I just told a guy yesterday, it all comes down to romance and finance, the troubles that alcoholics have. And that's what I've just seen to be true, you know, and And that's been true in my life. And so it's like not, you know, coming in a feral animal, not knowing how to regard anybody or myself. Well, what do I do regarding sex? You know, I like this girl. She likes me. I'm just out of prison. She's 5 years sober. What do you think? Seems great. And my sponsor, everybody else had an idea about it. My sponsor said, go ahead. You're crazy now. If you wait a few years till you get in a relationship, you'll just be crazy around that then. If you don't have the experience that you walk through, you're not going to know. He says, now with that, AA doesn't tell you what to do or what not to do, but I will tell you what the cost is. And as the first guy that started talking to me about the cost, you know, if somebody gives me a sandwich, I think that's free. No, man, there's a cost to that. Go ahead and take some cigarettes in prison. There's a cost. There's a cost for all of it. And he goes, the cost of this here is that you come into AA and she come into AA and you both got your umbilical cords in your hand looking to plug into something. And what you need is you need a spiritual experience. You need to plug into God, Tait. But this is a nice alternative to that. You know, it'll take the place of it, like high fructose corn syrup for a while. And then it'll end in destruction. But right now it'll feel good. And it was the first time I started thinking about what you put off till later might bear greater fruit than the cancer that you'll get if you take the bite right now. I never really had that idea together, and I was never really a great watcher of my thoughts. I would have a thought, I would feel something about it, and then I would act on it. Now that is crazy making. There's no success in that life. And so then I started reading like a bunch of different, you know, a guy named Eckhart Tolle, like all these kinds of things started coming up, you know, and across my board about how to look at your mind and get clearer. And then this idea of meditation came up too. I want to get first about sex, more about sex. You know, and I'd be in these conventions and Wacky Pa, Glurky Pa, Icky Pa, and all this stuff. Great Lakes region is Glurky Pa. Anyway, and we'd be putting these conventions together or bidding for them and trying to do them. And there's young people everywhere. And, you know, young people in sobriety and like, there's a lot of sex at those things, you guys, if you don't know. And inside of that, there's like, how do I want to behave and who do I want to be remembered as, right? And this whole idea about, you know, don't mess around with the newcomer and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, nobody says that. There's no rules about that. There's nothing. But I did have the opportunity to walk into AA with a guy who about 6 different girls in the room knew intimately. And I thought, man, I don't want that. I'd like to have something special, and I'd like to not have it be just sullied all over the room. Now, I've acted a whore all through AA also. I want to say that this was a fleeting idea. But I've really done my best to stay true to that. And I would hear guys counter it and say, well, you know, she's super attractive. Somebody's going to go and do that. And so I thought, well, it won't be me. And one of the benefits of that I see later on is that some of my very best friends in life are people that I didn't have sex with when everything pointed to that it was okay to do that. And what a powerful medicine sex is. And I always didn't regard it as such. I thought it was just something for me to feel, you know, and inside of those things, it's like I started to look at things in a serious way because I was maybe 1.5 or 2 years sober, I guess, and a woman came into my life who was about 10 years sober and 10 years older than me and didn't have any fallopian tubes and all these kinds of things and whatever. We have a baby and she's 26 years old right now today. And that's never felt good ever from the beginning. I've never felt right about how I've been in that and how she's been. And we were separated. She did a full adoption when she was 3 years old because she was married after, I don't know, our daughter was 6 months old, and it just transferred like that, right? And now there's all this, and my daughter's a lovely, beautiful, wonderful woman that is a thoughtful, purposeful, intelligent beacon of light out in the world through nothing of me, right? That's just how she is, you know, despite me, I guess. And I would say despite her mom too. But the whole issue with that is that I thought that I was untouched by that. I thought I just felt bad about that for long. I thought I was just carrying an albatross of like, man, this is how powerful it is. And you misstepped. And now here we are, and you created a human that you're not responsible for in this world. And it's felt horrible, and it's been a shameful thing to me. And I never said anything about it in AA anywhere, but there's a lot of gossip around about it. And that was all something, and feeling like, And I'm just a young guy. I don't know anything, you guys, and I'm going to go back to prison anytime. I mean, that's what I told Andrea when I said, shit, man, I just barely out of the joint. I figured this is where I'm going to end up again. Like, all I knew is you couldn't count on me. And it felt awful. And I thought I was untouched by that, and I'm not. And I'll go into that more later. But as far as sex goes, I pray for the right ideal. I pray for, I write it out, and I write, what would your sexual ideal be, and all this. And I'm just here to say this about that. I don't want to go into it because everybody's experience is as varied as everybody in here. But what I will say is that what I thought my ideal was is no longer what my ideal is. And there's probably been 10 incarnations of that ideal over the last 20 years. And I'm a work in progress, and I'm a different fellow with every step that I take, and the world's a different place with every step that I take. And so I have to continually go back and re-scrub myself through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the only way that I can get clean of the filth I accumulate in the world, really. I felt like I belonged in AA after I got done with that 4th step. And I felt that I'd done something hard, and I'm here, right? But it wasn't really until that 9th step when I started looking at people, and I paid some money back and admitted some things and rebuilt some fences, that I knew when I went to make those approaches that I was not the same person, that I was a changed person. And that was true in a lot of ways. But then also I can see these character defects, and they come up 5 years later in a different way, or these things that I think are unsettled are just energies within me that are there to curate, mediate, maybe. But I don't know that they disappear ever. And maybe that's not a lot of hope. If a guy with 27 years sober saying that it's not that there's not relief, but it's like there's always more work to do. And I guess I always thought I was going to get to a finish line or a retirement or something like that, and like, we're good. And instead, what I found is that I fall in love with the process of what gives me life. And that's been Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've been a big fan of Alcoholics Anonymous from the very beginning. And I hope I am to the very end. In the last, it's just a fast forward and jump. There's so much that's happened. Anyway, 3 years ago, so as Sam was saying earlier, I used to fight professionally for a living, right? And I put myself in a lot of dangerous positions in my life that led to damage, I guess. And then I get out of that business and I go in the film business, and it's still, there's some rough stuff. I do a lot of stunt work and stuff and whatever. Anyway, in 2019 in June, I got smashed. I was in a stunt that went real bad, and I was unconscious for 5 minutes on the floor, and all the stuff. And then what happened later was a subsequent post-concussive syndrome that put me in the worst position I ever remember being in my life. I never felt so vulnerable. I thought maybe a baby in utero maybe is as vulnerable as me, but I could not go outside. I could not get exposed to sunlight. I could not hear loud noises. I could not entertain any conversations. I would sit and I'd look at the floor, and I'm reduced to my breath. And so for the last couple of years, I've just been sitting, looking at the floor and trying to breathe through the pain and the headaches and then the psychic trauma that it all is. And one of the weird things about having a concussion like that, I'm sitting with my mom, and thank God I was living at that time with Meredith, who's in the room tonight, and I just needed to be taken care of. I would sob every day, right? And it's weird to talk about this. I never talk about my work. I never talk about this kind of stuff in AA. It's a different kind of meeting, and this is what it's been for me. This is my life, and so I need to kill myself bad. I become a stranger in my own skin. I can't think. I don't have any. That's like not thinking of that word earlier, right? I'm looking for position, and I can't find the word, right? And so then I'm in this place where nothing makes sense, and the confidence that I have to think clearly is gone, because I know that my perception, my filter is skewed. I know it's twisted. And so knowing that, I know that I'm not thinking correctly. So I'm checking in. And so all my confidence over the last few years, it just goes, I'm a puddle. about halfway through this, after my first brain clinic, and before I'm going to a second one, I was riding around with a pistol in my truck, just trying to get the courage to shoot myself in the chest. And that was, I guess, last summer, right? And I told a friend that, just he called me and he says, "Hey, what are you doing? How you doing?" And he was like a pro surfer type, and don't talk to him a whole lot. And I go, "Nothing, just same old COVID, and I just rode around yesterday with the truck trying to get the courage to shoot myself in the chest, and it's a pretty nice night tonight, and I don't know what's going on with you." And that was kind of the way I presented it. And he goes, "Yeah, things are good, man. You sure?" And we get off the phone. I get him off the phone, the way an alcoholic can, like, "I don't need your help." And 10 minutes later, another friend of ours calls and says, "My husband's at this brain treatment center right now, and you need to call him right now. He's with the owner right now, and you need to talk to him." And so I did. And he goes, "We can't help a lot of people, but I think I can help you, Tait." And I go, "Sound, man, I need help." And so then my mom comes over the next day, and she says, "I'm so glad that you got hurt, Tait." and I go, "Well, you got to tell me more about that, Mom." And she said, "Well, like the last 8 years, you've been changing, you've been darkening, and she couldn't quite put a finger on it. But to me, I knew just what she meant, because it felt like a dark cloud was coming over me and that it was catching up. And then I got smashed out. But what I'd found through healing, and I found a lot of recovery, and I found a lot of help, and my darkest past is my greatest ally. I've been able to help a lot of guys find help and push off suicide another month, another 2 months, and get down the road into where you can heal some, because goddamn, it takes time. And it's in God's time, not my time. And it's way longer than I thought it would be. And I'd gotten death sentences from doctors, and I had to find my own help. And I thank God for the people in my life that helped me find that help, because it's not readily available. When I went to the doctor, they said, "Take fish oil. And if you don't feel better in 8 months, come on back and we'll give you Alzheimer's medicine." And I thought, "You're telling me to kill myself, man." And thank God that wasn't the answer, right? But what I did find out in my healing is that I was hurt way before I got hurt. And I had no idea to the extent that I got hurt. And I feel like in a lot of ways I've been restored in a better way than I've been. But during that time and all that confusion, I created a lot of damage. I kept a polyamorous relationship going, talk about my ideal sex life. I didn't know one. I was so self-obsessed for years and just driven in what I wanted to do that I never wanted a relationship. When I said that I was never hurt by Andrea and my daughter, man, that scarred me forever. I never wanted to be intimate with anybody ever again. I never wanted to be close to anybody ever again. And I didn't think it affected me at all, because I'm inside the fishbowl. Can't even see that it's damaging my relationships. Those are the people I'm in relationships. That's their problem. I remember Bob Earl was talking on tape, talking about he'd been married 11 times or 67 times or something. And he was telling his friend about it. And he goes, "Did you ever think one time that the problem wasn't them, Bob?" And he goes, "Not once." Right? And he goes, "And then I knew I had a problem." And it's like that, right? I don't even know I'm the problem when I'm inside the problem. And so now I'm in a place, with this emotional sobriety, where there's a hell of a lot of wreckage to do, and there's a hell of a lot of stuff to run from, right? There's a hell of a lot of facing up to Tait that I'm not excited to do. I've been in the middle of a 4-step for months. I'm really basically finished. I don't know. It's like a lot of this stuff has been, I've just only the last 6 months or something, I've gotten outside again. I've gotten to be where I can work out again. I've gotten to where I can take on, but man, I've used that excuse then of coasting and putting on the brakes to take out the discipline of right action a lot. Cause I'm coming from a place where I'm just drooling on the floor and breathing. And that's what was appropriate at that time. But now I'm in a different part of my growth, and there's different things to face up to. And inside of that, it reminds me of what a guy told me a long time ago. He goes, "We can get through anything together, and we die alone, Tait. It's a disease of isolation. You got to get clean with yourself and your God and your people, so that you can be free to be as useful as you can be. Otherwise, you're going to be you have those hooks that Bill's talking about, right? You have those hooks that are into the past or into dependency of this kind or that kind. And that doesn't get us anywhere. And so a lot of what I found is that I'm just starting to reenact disciplines in my life and going, okay, I do this many times a week, like whether it's, a workout, I run, I read this many pages, like I couldn't read for a while, I had a horrible stutter that I couldn't get over. I had neurogenic tremors. There's all this stuff. And then I lay on top of it and I go, where's sobriety? Where's surrender? This is the process. This is healing. They say it takes 3 to 6 years. Maybe it does. So here we are, we're inside of it. And so right now, as far as emotional sobriety goes, I'm just, I laugh when I say, I feel like a little kid that is sitting amongst giants or something like that, and I've got so much regard and respect for Alcoholics Anonymous that I don't know that I bring, I'm not sure what my values are to everybody. And so when I come, I just pray, I go, try to let people know who you are, Tait, and hopefully you can be useful to somebody inside of that. And that's all I know. That's really all I know. They used to tell me early on that, the best thing that you can be in your life, Tait, is an AA in good standing. And that's all I ever wanted to be ever since I first heard that phrase. I just want to be an AA in good standing. I want to be like Dr. Silkwood talks about in the book. You can rely on anything that these folks have to say regarding alcoholism. You can be a bastion for light. You are uniquely positioned to be a godsend to other people that need your help, that are uniquely positioned as you are, and they're in the dark still. And so a lot of it for me is to expose myself, I guess, and then to stand in the light and try, even if it burns, to stand in the light, because most of the time it's gentle and it offers those in the dark a way to look and go, maybe me too. And it keeps me from running into the building, because I used to be a guy like, let's run into the dark, rescue, and the fact is that until I'm ready to listen, there's no words that you can say that are going to help me. And then until I'm ready to become aware, I love that's one of our principles is this awareness, and that's in our 11th step of looking at awareness and looking at, like, where am I more aware of how I affect others and how I affect myself with what I think, what I do, how I act. Like, it all matters. And I used to just push it off and think if you didn't see it, didn't matter, or if it wasn't objectionable, it didn't matter. And that was the thing too, is they told me in AA, and this is the most profound thing, my own emotional sobriety, whatever, the emotional sobriety, Alcoholics Anonymous, and the men that I met, holy God. I mean, these guys are like, it doesn't matter what you pray to. We have no defining qualities that you need. Just find a God and whatever you understand that to be, anything. I've heard Snickers bars, doorknobs, wallpaper, rocks, fish. I heard all kinds of things, right? They said fish, maybe not so good. It can die. We want something that's got some legs, that lasting qualities. But inside of that, man, they let it unfold for me. And they showed me that as long as I'm seeking God, whatever that is, and I'm seeking a better understanding of when I'm seeking God, I'm seeking a better position of my understanding of my place in the world, right? Like that's what it is. And I love that surfer friend of mine. He would talk about it. He'd say, he says, I think I'm 100% God. He says, just like that wave is 100% wave, but it ain't all the wave that there is, right? It's just an expression of the ocean. That's all that is. And you're just an expression of God, Tait. But if you take the rock away from the mountain, it's no longer the mountain. You have to be near the source. You have to be cultivating the source. And so for me, that's been real important, is just to dummy up and get inside a group and be of service and try to be helpful. And hopefully some magic happens to me all along the way, because I can't force it. I was looking for the thing to force, to push, to cajole, to bribe, to whatever. And it wasn't that. It was the hardest thing ever. Just sit here and be still. And how long can you do that? And are you able to do that with yourself, or what are the thoughts in your head? And it was the first thing, one of the best directions I ever got for the 9th step of doing it, of like, but what names do I go after first? What do I do? And he goes, Tait, who do you think about at night before you go to bed? And those are the things you got to take care of. Because I used to trip out and go, well, what about Tommy in 6th grade that I stole his bubble gum or something? Hey, does it bother you? If it doesn't bother you, it doesn't matter. That's not the stuff we're taking care of. We're taking care of the stuff that eats your lunch. We're not taking care of the stuff that you've got your ethics settled around. Maybe those will change later. You'll have to take care of Tommy. But right now, it's the things that are going to destroy you, that you're obsessed with. Those are the things we have to get clear of. And so those are the names we're going to attack first. And we're going to go after that. And when I did it that way, the freedom was so great that it was an exciting thing for me to go and endeavor. Because I thought, oh my, I'd never felt the freedom like that before, you know? You know, I was about, I guess, 4 years sober, and my best road partner, he ended up getting killed by the police. And I got a call at 4 in the morning or whatever. Rory's gone, and I talked to him, you know, earlier that week, and you know, he was living the drug dealer's life. He's got stuff in his walls. Police are across the street taking pictures of everybody. There's all this stuff's going on. It's that kind of life, whatever. And he was taking a class at college, and he goes, yeah, I'm taking a class at college. I go, wow, that's great. And I'd gotten done telling him I'm making $750 as a night tech at the treatment center for kids. And then I make $10 an hour at the coffee bar. I sell coffee. Is what I'm doing, Rory. And he goes, oh, cool. I just got a new boat, and I got a new hearse outside, and all this stuff. And he says he's taking this course. And I go, oh, cool. I go, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I got to write a journal. I go, and I'm smart, right? So I'm going to help him. Well, you know, that's easy. You just write what you do in the day. And he goes, I can't do that, Tait. And it just dawned on me. And I go, my God. And I go, you know, I'm not scared about who comes through the door right now, who's listening to this phone call, who I run into. I'm not, none of that stuff bothers me, Roar. And we'd always been in competition. I mean, we always in competition, whatever we could bet on or what we always did. And he goes, you passed me up, Tait. And because he's still stricken, he's got all these things, and he's stricken with fear all the time. And then he's dead, you know. And his mom sits there and holds my hand, looking at him in the casket. And she says, you're not supposed to marry your children, Tait. She says, don't let your mama do this. And so there I am. You know, I remember at one time I was going to fix some stuff in Rory's life, and I thought I'd be able to do that easily because I was outside of the scene and stuff like that. And a guy says, is anything going to be any different in Rory's life if you do this? I mean, like next week, next month, is he not going to end up in the same kind of, and I wanted to control and make it okay and this and that. And I had to acquiesce and say, no, there's nothing that would be different in his life. It would just be, he would just keep running the same game and end up in the same place he ended up. And knowing that, it took me that to get outside of the idea that I had any say in anybody's life at all. Like I couldn't be, I couldn't push my helpfulness any more than I could push you in any kind of direction you didn't want to go. All I could do is just sit in it and be an example of something that you could have if you wanted it, just like Adam was for me. And then I could talk about it, and I could talk about the gifts that I'd gotten. And I could talk about, you know, because the gifts that I gotten was never, I mean, it's never been a money thing or a cash and prizes type of thing. The gifts I've gotten is that I get to sit with myself, and I don't have to silence my thoughts with a 45 or with a bottle of Jack Daniels, you know, because before that's the only way I could get away from my thoughts. And boy, I guess I'd like to say too that this is the, you know, as far as like emotional sobriety, I got sober before there was internet and before there were phones and stuff like that. And we smoked in meetings, and there's a different kind of world, right? And so when I look at all that, I don't know that there's a lot of people looking for clout nowadays, I see, and looking for, like, I want to be something. I remember feeling like that when I was a kid. I want to be something. I want to be known for this, that. And AA has been so strong in its guideposts. And it's made so much good sense about, hey, man, just hold your mud about this thing that's so sacred and saving your life. You don't need to be telling everybody at work or on now on the internet or this or that. And so I look at this and I go, here's this thing that saved my life. The one thing that AA asked me not to do is please don't talk about it. So I try to be real careful of that. I try to hold these traditions close. Tom Ewell, he echoes in my damn head and says, it's up to you and people like you to keep this safe for my grandkids. This is important. And there's a lot of lightness and there's a lot of all that and easiness that goes around. But this is earnestly important. It's deadly important. And it's deadly important that we're here and that we keep our structure going. And so I try to look to those things. And inside of that, it doesn't make me feed my ego, because I want to honor this thing so goddamn much that I don't need to tell everybody that I'm sober or that this or that, or I don't need that. I don't need you to tell me that I'm okay. And that was one of those dependencies that I've had for so long. And I don't think maybe it was until I got smashed out that I really thought about it in a different way, because of course I want people to like me. I want to be loved. I want to, all those things that I'm afraid I don't have when I'm born. All the things that I think I need that first drink behind, like whatever it is. And I don't think that lack of love is what drives you to a drink. I think maybe you're born an alcoholic. I don't know. That's not a debate for me. But this idea of I want to talk about a friend of mine I talked to yesterday. He's a younger guy and he's a film producer and a director. And he's, in some way, it's weird, all these different levels, right? He's talking about these guys that he wants to impress, he wants to talk to, and he thinks, I want to tell them who I am, but I don't want to come across like a douche, like I want to tell them all the things I can do, but I want to, and I go, yeah, that's never the right way. And I go, you want to go and be your own advertising agency, right? And the world doesn't need that. I go, what opens my world up is when I become curious about you. I don't need to tell you all about me. I'm here as a being in this world to learn and to understand more so that I can breathe a breath in unison with you. What I think of as God is all of our spirits intertwined. I think that there's a God field that we all create together. Just like if we're the rock that's near the mountain, we're the mountain. And I think that all of our souls are like that in the world. And I think it's up to me to curate mine, to have it be as energetic and as powerful and useful as the world needs it to be. And maybe that's all of us. And thank God that we're not all sick on the same day. I always get reminded, because I don't always feel like I'm able to answer the call. And then somebody else is like, hey, I can see you. You just need to know who you are. You need to get told again. And that was a thing too, of like being hurt and absent for so long. I question things, and you lose touch of who you are when you lose touch of your community. You lose an idea of self. I lost an idea of myself because I don't have people to reflect who I am. Am I useful? Who am I? It's like when I was a professional athlete. Who are you now that you're not? Are you the hole in the middle of the dome? Who are you now? If you're not the thing that you're doing, who are you? And these questions of emptiness, I've had to ask myself a lot because my careers have been stuff that times out. And it goes, okay, who are you now that the lights are off? What is your being? What is your essence? And what I come to is stuff that I hear in Alcoholics Anonymous, is that I want to be a useful entity, to be an enrichment to my fellows. I want to express love and tolerance. I don't want to have conversations that don't have graciousness and generosity in them. I want to be able to be a symbol of that. And I couldn't do that stuff if I weren't a sober man. There's just an impossibility, because when I drink, my life is reduced to the vessel that the booze is in, that I don't need any bigger than that. It's so easy for me to live in the day when I'm using, right? Because I don't need to get past what's in my pocket. Like, cool, we're good right now, because now is forever. And then when I'm not getting high or drinking, I'm thinking about when's the next time I'm going to be getting high. I'm absorbed in the whole thing. There's no space to be useful. There's no space for any thought about me. It's like my friend said this morning, you think of yourself too often. It's not that you think yourself too highly or too lowly, just too often, Tait. And inside of that, how can I help myself? Thinking of others, right? I can think of others more. Just like I told my friend yesterday, think about their benefit, how they're self-conscious too. Everybody's in this place. And then I think about this idea about God, right? And the seeking God and, personality shift sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. God consciousness. Man, I never heard of God consciousness. Like, what does that mean? God consciousness. And I sat with it for years. I never got an answer sufficient to me. But I thought, man, dummy, that's just putting God on everything. It's putting a God filter on the car in front of you that doesn't use his blinker. It's putting a God filter on your mom and going, you don't need to argue with what her views are about the world or COVID or whatever. You just love her. Like God, like you express as if everything's God, Tait, and your life raises in vibration when I can treat others with the honor that I would treat God. And that's for me what a God consciousness becomes. And I go, man, I want to curate that as much as I can. And here I thought it was this ephemeral wisp that I could never grasp. But then Tom Ewell taught me that there was actions. He goes, 90% of a spiritual life, Tait, is having manners when you don't feel like it. Go ahead and be polite anyway. Oh, did you get your toast up? Who cares? Be nice and smile and say thank you, right? And it's all those contrary actions that have led me into a better place of clarity. It wasn't that they made me happy. It's not any of that. It's I got a clarity. I got a clarity. I'd stopped the noise. There's no more storm in my head. And inside of that, when I can fit myself into that, I know there's a good place. And I'll tell you right now that me, as I am, I mean, I feel broken to some degree. I feel like I'm re-entering life in a different way as a full adult, and it's odd. But what I do have faith and hope in is the program Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know that I'll be held regardless. And I know that the same kindness that Brian and Neil showed me when I first walked in the door, that kindness that I didn't have defenses for, I know that's still here. And I know that when I'm not strong, I can get carried by the group and by God and by all the road that I've taken, man, it's made me strong. And this last few years has made me strong, and I'll have stronger legs tomorrow for it. And that's kind of the way I see my experiences now. There's not a good or there's not a bad. I don't say that. I'm grateful for the smash. I'm so glad I got hit, because I would have never seen how hurt I was. I would have never seen how much I needed to take care of. And I would have never gotten to the place that I get now, nor to have the foothold to where I can go. And I feel like I got a stronger foothold now than ever. Maybe I can't see over the cliff or what the top of the mountain is, but man, I feel like I got my feet under me at least again. And that shit's never guaranteed, And so I'm just real grateful. And I think about another thing that helped me so much is it came from a non-AA friend of mine, one of my martial arts instructors, and he says, there's and I don't know about all this, go ahead and Google a fact check, whatever facts you can find, but he says the earth vibrates at a certain vibration, right? It's like 640 megahertz or whatever. And there's a vibration of love that is that same vibration. And there's a vibration in meditation that you can reach that same vibration. But all that stuff is fleeting. Love comes and goes. There's a lot of weird stuff around love, real unadulterated love is a tough thing to find and a tough thing to curate in yourself. Meditation goes away when you're out of meditation sometimes. But he says that same vibration you can have in appreciation. And you can consciously and forcefully appreciate every moment. Forcefully meaning I don't always want to. I want to feel crummy. I can force my appreciation. And inside of that, I can change the way I feel. And inside of that, I get a different leveling up with my God. And it's kind of like when I hated people early on, and they would say, hey, you got anger, and we would read through and how it works. And they'd talk about praying for these people. And then I would read in one of the stories and talk about pray for that son of a bitch every day for 2 weeks. And by the 2 weeks, it'll change. And I said, well, okay, what kind of prayer is that? Then I got to pray for what? And they go, well, you got to pray for what you want. That he has all that stuff. I go, well, if he got different desires of mine, that's awful arrogant to say. And he goes, well, just pray that he gets all the things that he wants. I go, can I pray, God, I hope that son of a bitch gets everything he deserves. And he goes, sure. And I go, so I start there, right? I start there. And then, years and decades down the road, I go, dickhead, you're the same guy that's mad at the guy not using his blinker. And you're the same guy not using his blinker. You're the same guy inside of 5 minutes at different points of the day. So maybe we take it easy on everybody a little bit. Maybe everybody's a work in progress. Maybe everybody's at a different step in the river and we're all in growth. And inside of that, pretty hard to carry anger. Anyways, I feel like I got a lot of divergent things going. I'd really rather hear from you guys, and I'm just worn out right now. And I love you all, and thanks for bearing with me. I've been looking at this thing. I got 90 people in here. We only lost 8 people, you guys, and I thought maybe there'd be 6 by the time I was finished. So thank you very much. And yeah.
You did great, man. Tait, that was beautiful. Total mic drop, man. So much in there, and so much. I was having like this exact same conversation with a guy today who was somewhat newly sober. And I started drawing lines from, well, there's that part where it says, imagine life without faith, and somebody, what was it? Kurt was talking about it. And Jeff the other day, like, imagine life without all that, and try and pull out God out of all these people and all these situations and all these things that came to you. And then start looking at all the things in my life that I really appreciate or that are any value, and they all funnel down from this God, from this from this big bang that started in Akron, Ohio, with Bill and Bob, and that love that was sent through them to other people. And you start thinking about how each person who carries that. And I used to think like God consciousness. I always thought that God consciousness was going to be a feeling or a thought. It's going to take place on a mental plane or intellectual plane, or it's going to be a feeling. And then I started seeing it being revealed to me around people and through people and situations. And it was almost so cool. Like the whole story starts to change the more open I become. And it's like that whole journey of like laying these masks down and stop defending yourself. It's a huge deal, man. Huge deal. And it's a really beautiful thing and really scary thing at the same time. But, you just said so much that was awesome. And can you call on a couple people, Tait? Usually the way we do this, we call on 2 people.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Find 2 people and then we'll open it up.
Okay. Meredith Sherman and Pat McHenry.
Okay. Meredith Sherman and Pat McHenry.
You can start, Meredith.
I was going to say Pat can start.
I know you were.
Okay. Hi, I'm Meredith. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Tait. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sobriety. Yeah, I mean, I, of course, am going through my own emotions with this, but the beauty of the program and everything that I've learned really helps me put one foot in front of the other and and continue to reach my hand out to AA to be of service. It's like, I don't know, I felt myself squirrely this week and have things come up and just knowing that I've been here long enough with enough good influences around to seek out, those I can help. And I'm just so grateful for those messages. It's hard for me not to speak. I don't know how this meeting's run with crosstalk and honey roasting and all that. I was there when you were leveled out and without AA, we wouldn't have made it the past couple of years. Like I can attest to that AA, like back to the basics, back to the foundation, the principles, this program saved this man's life in the last couple of years and got him to where he can, speak tonight. Again, I feel like it's inappropriate to share like that, but yeah, like when all else is just lost, to know that we have something like this program, like so lucky. I mean, with all the unpredictable tragedies that can happen. I just felt like, wow, we have this thing we can, and Zoom just started, you know, it's like we can turn it on every morning. First thing, get in as many meetings as we can, keep it, you know, focused on like, God is everything, God is nothing. Like, what's the next right action? Like all of these, the slogans, like the traditions, the principles, like the concepts, just like, how can we throw ourselves into this and keep moving forward in the darkest of times. And like, I'm grateful for every experience that has shown me that this program works for all of it. And like, you know, and I don't even know like how much, what's next. And that's pretty exciting too. Just like deepening my faith in the program and like the, you know, wanting to learn as much as I can about all of it, just because I watch it work in others and the miracles. And so it must be working for me too, right? Like you said, it's hard to see it in ourselves sometimes, but like I'm here and I keep showing up and I keep doing the thing. And it's, you know, it saved a lot of lives and like the grace that has I've witnessed. And honestly, I'm gonna say like in myself, like the patience that I've I've learned by practicing these principles in very challenging times, turning to the steps and you know, reaching out. Yeah, it's just, I can't speak enough to like the miracle that it all is and how grateful I am to keep being challenged in my life so that I'm keep I get to keep turning to AA to show me how to do it and like, you know, to keep growing. So anyways, thank you for your share tonight and for calling on me.
Thank you. Love you. Pat.
Hi, everybody. My name is Pat. I'm an alcoholic. Gosh, Tait, I just love you so much. The spark of the divine in you is the same today as it was the first time I met you at the Friendship Club back when we were new and trying to get our feet on the ground and having a good time, actually. Last night, I was asked to speak at my home group's 33rd anniversary meeting, and Tait and Kat were there with me. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that to both of you. I feel like we are connected by this golden chain of the people in our lives, like Tom and Juanita and Mary Thayer, who I don't see in here anymore, but we have such a privilege to know that there is a higher power. And it's not just something we talk about. We see it in each other. We see it in our walk. We see it in our vulnerability. We see it we're God with skin onto each other. You know, I don't like everybody, and not everybody likes me. It's my job to like me. It's not somebody else's job to like me. But there are some people I'm oil and water with. When I'm in one of those situations, emotional sobriety to me is keeping enough distance so that the oil and water don't get shaken up, or so that vinegar and baking soda don't make a mess. Tait, you and I've talked about this before. Just to be honest, to be able to be who I am, warts and all, is probably one of the greatest gifts of sobriety for me. I don't have to try to impress anybody. I don't have to be speculating about who I'm supposed to be. And you are that kind of example to me. I mean, I know that you've been through all kinds of things in the three-dimensional world, but in the fourth dimension, you are still the same person at heart. You're one of my anchors. And I'm really grateful for that. I know that you are to others as well. I'm glad you're feeling better, and I'm glad your life is making better sense to you, but that's just the surface of where we are. And I think that I'm I'm so grateful that we get a chance to walk together. Because that's the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous to me, is we get to walk with each other. We don't have to drink anymore. I mean, that's the beginning of it. But life is, as we share it with each other, is the most precious gift of all. I guess emotional sobriety to me is something that my sponsor Juanita tells me all the time: stay where your feet are. If I stay where my feet are, I'm happy. My first sponsor, Mike, used to say to me, I'd be spinning around about something or other, especially somebody at work that was a nemesis or something. And he'd say, well, are you okay? And I go, yeah. And he'd say, well, are you bleeding? And I'd look to see if I'd cut myself or something. No, I'm okay. I'm okay right this minute. And that is something I never could have hoped to be. When I was new, I think the hardest direction, I still think the hardest directions in the big book are relax, take it easy, don't struggle. And what an order, you know? But I'm there a lot. I couldn't even have imagined that. That's emotional sobriety to me, to be where my feet are and to acknowledge that there is love and beauty in anywhere, everywhere, if that's what I'm looking for. You mentioned living by principles. I sort of feel like the older I get and the longer I'm sober, the three-dimensional world and the spiritual world are kind of going like this. You know, the three-dimensional world has diminished for me, and the spiritual world is a bigger part of my reality. I see that in the faces of all the people on these screens, whether I know them or not. But the ones that I know and love, and you're way up at the top of that, are the ones that teach me by your example of how to be just another human being, another child of God, walking around, do the best I can with whatever I've got right this minute, because that really is enough. That really is good enough. Thank you so much, Tait, for a wonderful share. And while we're at it, thanks, Kat, for last night, and Tom and Juanita. You are beloved. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Hey,
so
thank
much.
you. Speaking of Tom and Juanita, you want to share?
Hey guys. Hey guys, my name's Tom. I'm an alcoholic and sober by the grace of the loving God. And thank you, Tait. I don't see you on there. I don't know where I've gotten to, some screen. Yeah, I'm trying to find you so that I'm talking to you, and I'm having a tough time. Oh, there you are. We've known each other a long time. I saw you come in, and when you were hanging out with Brian and Neil, that's when I knew you first, and they used to tell stories about you. I think they used you to illustrate what could happen to somebody if they didn't sober up, But anyway, we've traveled a long ways together, and you're really one of my heroes, man. You are, and because Mary Thayer said to me, it was 32 years ago, and she said, the old timers in LA, they said, you spell God R-I-S-K. And, I think there's so much to that, there's so much to that. I mean, I've jumped out a few times, and God's always caught me, and certainly God has caught you, and I just love you to death. I absolutely do. And thank you so much. This was great tonight. Really good. Thanks.
Thanks so much, man. Love you, Tom.
Yeah. Please raise your hand if you'd like to share. What about Jessica Platt? All right, well, she no one to share. Anybody else want to raise their hand?
Yeah, it looks like Kathy Paris has her hand up.
Okay, take it away.
Hello, hi, I'm Kathy. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much, Tait. Good to see you, brother. It was nice meeting you first at a Cat's Philly meeting, and then you came to speak at our little Louisville meeting here in Colorado. And I so identify with the brain injury part. As we had talked, my brain injury was 23 years ago. Actually, Tom was chair of the Fellowship of the Spirit, and I was treasurer that year. And I was coming back, and on June 13th, 1998, my life changed. Took 7 years. So keep on keeping on, man. It'll get better. It always gets better. And then, those of you who know my story, I was going to take my own life on June 13th of 99. And a series of coincidences happened, and here I am today. And that darn God just is so powerful and keeps on keeping on, because we're supposed to be here. And what I used to think is that I got broken, but I got broken open. And what happened is I had to lose my mind to find my soul. And then my soul exploded, and I had this continuous experience with my creator. And it's been even more powerful this 2021. And it's just, I wouldn't have known what I wouldn't have been able to do and to offer. And so we take our pieces and we get put back together by each of us. So I love you, man. Good to see y'all.
Thank you so much for sharing. And we have, I think Elizabeth has her hands up. All right.
Hi,
Elizabeth.
I'm Elizabeth, alcoholic. Wow, that was beautiful, Tate. I'm so grateful to you. I've been sober a while, 33 years, and I really appreciate speakers that talk about, like what's going on now, how I'm trying to apply this stuff in my life, because that's my struggle. It's like, yeah, I know the book, I know all that stuff, but then when it comes to the rubber meets the road, it's like, where's my God? I'm reacting to life. Oh my God. And how to get that in my life. And I'm so used to crisis solving that when life's going well, I forget that I need to be disciplined and actually seek God, like actually do the work. I want it through osmosis, still. And but living this way of life, it's truly beautiful. And when I actually practice it, and I remember to stop and ask for help, something happens that I can't explain. And I do a lot of service with newcomers right now, and I keep telling them, like, you can't. I'm not going to believe something just because you tell me. I have to see the results, and I'm not going to see the results until I have an experience, and I'm not going to have an experience until I take some action. And I don't think that stuff. I don't think our 10, 11, and 12. At least not where I'm from. You never would hear about it. You'd never hear about it. Someone else who shared talked about that. And it's so important, because of what happens. You talked about what happens, that darkness. My husband has 37 years in AA and 3 years sober. And no one was telling him that stuff. Like, this is a new way of life. This isn't patching up the old way. This isn't, until your way runs out, then maybe you can go, get some help. And I never got that. I know it's in the book somewhere, but I just never heard it that way. I never got it really. I mean, I know it's there. Trust me. And I see it now. But I just really appreciate everything you had to say. And I didn't. I think one time I was like, "How long is he going to talk?" But I was totally enthralled, so I wasn't. I stayed. So there. So awesome. Thanks, Sam, for the meeting too. I'm glad I came over here. Thanks, you guys.
Hey, thanks for such a beautiful talk tonight, Tate. That was really moving.
I wondered the same thing. How long am I going to talk? I really appreciate it. Thank you all. And thanks for all the wonderful things you said. And thanks for the space. That's the thing that I want to say is that AA, it saved me 27 years ago, and it was here and it held me, and Zoom came up right at the time. AA has been the thing that's been able to hold me no matter how I jostle my life about. And I'm just so grateful to y'all. And I really mean that to you all personally, to the people, the blood and the bones that make up the room, man. It's just the way we heal through each other's stories is just phenomenal to me. And thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sam.
I love that part where it talks about he's forgotten that he struck a limitless load, that is, and he can mine it for the rest of his life as long as he gives the whole thing away. That's so true. It just keeps coming, keeps flowing, a whole new story, a whole new experience.
Right. That's what I told the kid yesterday. I said, let me tell you a little bit about AA, Jamie. And AA, we got this thing. We're not all great folks, but we have this this enlightened idea about altruism, right? This self-interested altruism, where selfishly, I'm going to be a great guy and be helpful to you because it saves my very life. And that happens, and we do that for a while. And then I think it talks about in freedom from bondage that I'm doing the thing that I ought to do because I ought to do it. And then when that changes to I'm doing the thing that I ought to do because that's what I want to do, that's freedom. And that's, that's what I'm looking, that's the guideposts I'm looking for, and I really thank you anyway.
Yeah.
I'll talk more apparently.
Oh yeah, no, it's beautiful, man. Beautiful. Hey, so we usually close this meeting. We just kind of go to our inner room and everybody says, for those who care to join, I kind of recite the Lord's Prayer to myself inwardly. So whoever would like to do that, we'll mute ourselves, and thank you guys for a great, great night. Beautiful, man. Thank you.
Good night, all. Thank you, Sam, for doing
Thank you all
this.
so
Thanks,
much.
Tate.
Have
Thanks,
the
Sam.
best
Thanks,
night.
Thank you,
everyone.
Tate. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you,
so much.
everyone. Great meeting.
Thanks.